So hello, my name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy. I am the founder and director of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, and welcome to the February 9th edition of Office Hours. I have a quick agenda for you, and then we'll dig right into the special topics for tonight. I want to tell you a bit about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, as well as a bit about this program that you're attending tonight, which is Office Hours. From there, we'll jump into some questions from our community and then our featured topics. Public service loan forgiveness has been by far the topic we received the most questions about. So we're going to give you a comprehensive review of PSLF, the original version, as well as the provisions that came forward through the recent limited PSLF waiver. Then for the Marylanders, we're going to talk a bit about the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit, dive into some more frequently asked questions, and then have some time for a Q&A. If you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. I will take a look from time to time. And also, remember, we'll have time at the end. If your questions aren't answered in the slides, I will definitely get to them during this hour that we have together. So let's move forward and talk just a bit about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. The center was founded in July of 2001, and we are helping students to build financial life skills in hopes of empowering them to thrive. Our vision for Maryland's college and career students is an ambitious one, but we believe that it is achievable. We want all college and career students in Maryland to be creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. So if you are intrigued by this mission or would like to know more about the center, please do visit us online at mccfw.org so that you can learn more about the work that we're doing to make good on this vision. A bit about Office Hours. Office Hours is a free semi-monthly virtual student loan clinic that provides borrowers with a free, trusted venue to help them navigate student loans and prepare for financial success beyond repayment. As for my professional background, I'm a former administrator within a financial aid office at a university in Maryland. And during that time, I specialized on helping students and families repay or develop strategies to repay their student loan debt. And over the past 9 years, I've advised students and families on the repayment of more than $75 million in student loans. So I've seen a lot. I don't know it all, but I've seen a lot. And so I'm really happy to be able to present a program like Office Hours to those who need it. I must say before we get into the content, though, that Office Hours is provided for informational purposes only. As student loan borrowers, you are in control of the decisions that you make, of the strategies that you employ to go about repaying your debt, but Office Hours is meant to be an informational resource for you. We are at no point in time will the center do anything for you in the way of completing paperwork, making decisions for you. We are not that kind of organization. We are here to empower borrowers, direct them to knowledge, tools, and resources so that you can make the best decisions possible to fit your situation. So informational purposes only, we do the best that we can. And if I can't answer your questions tonight, then I will most certainly try to direct you to a resource that can give you an answer. So let's dig right into the questions. Question 1, I work for the government and have been repaying direct plus loans for my child's education. The loan servicer said I need to consolidate and enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, but consolidation would reset the repayment clock to 0. Can PSLF work in my situation? This is a really complicated question. It's complicated by the fact that we're talking about direct plus loans or parent plus loans that were taken out by a parent in order to pay for their child's education. And parent plus loans don't have the easiest route to become eligible for forgiveness through public service loan forgiveness. But I want to talk to you a bit more deeply about that. So this week, I've got a slide for you. It's to talk about parent plus loans and how they're treated with the original version of PSLF and the limited PSLF waiver. So under original public service loan forgiveness rules, of course, PSLF is going to be based on your qualifying employment as the parent. So as the parent, you need to be working for the government. That could be federal, state, local, even tribal colleges and universities. you have to work in that qualifying employment in order to gain the credit toward the 120 payments that are necessary to achieve public service loan forgiveness. Now, when it comes to public service loan forgiveness, certain types of repayment plans are more favorable than others. The income-driven plans are the ones that usually leave borrowers with the largest balance left to forgive after they've satisfied the work requirement. However, in the case of parents, parents can only qualify for one of those income-driven plans, and that plan is called income contingent repayment, often referred to as ICR. And the only way for parents to become eligible for that ICR repayment plan is to take their Parent Plus loans and consolidate them into a direct consolidation loan. So the language that you see at the bottom on the left hand of the slide comes from the Department of Education's Office of Federal Student Aid. It's that if you consolidate a PLUS loan that you took out on behalf of your child, you may then repay the new direct consolidation loan under the income contingent repayment plan. So first you have to consolidate, then you would enroll in the income contingent repayment plan. Unfortunately, with consolidation, when you consolidate a loan, your repayment clock starts over. It's like a new loan has been originated. So you would start at payment number one with the first month. And this is what keeps a lot of people from going down the road of consolidation, because they're looking at the years that they've already paid in the past and saying, wow, I really don't want to start over again. But if you're a parent and you're interested in public service loan forgiveness for your Parent Plus loans, then the consolidation is the gateway for you to get enrolled in that income contingent repayment plan and on the path to public service loan forgiveness. So minimum amount of time it would take you to apply for public service loan forgiveness, just for those Parent Plus loans, would be after 120 months of qualifying employment and payments on that plan. If you've been in repayment for a while already, that might not sound like a good option to you. But if you just started to repay those loans and you know that you're probably going to be working in public service for at least the next 10 years, then it may be worthwhile for you to consider consolidating those Parent Plus loans into a direct consolidation loan. Now, this situation that I just explained was PSLF under the original version. The waiver is a bit different for certain groups of Parent Plus borrowers. So according to the language of the waiver, Parent Plus loans are not eligible for credit directly. And when we say credit, we're talking about months of credit toward the 120 months that are needed to achieve public service loan forgiveness. Now, if a borrower has Parent Plus loans by themselves, no other types of loans, just Parent Plus loans, then it's true, those Parent Plus loans are not eligible for credit through the waiver. However, there's additional language that speaks specifically to people who have Parent Plus loans that they borrowed for their children's education, as well as student loans that they received for themselves as the student. I pulled this language straight from the Department of Education. It says, if a borrower has a mix of Parent Plus loans and loans they received as a student, the period the borrower was in repayment on the loans they received as a student will be considered as months of qualifying payments on the direct consolidation loan. So what that means is that if you are a parent, you took out Plus loans for your child, but you were also a student at one time and took out student loans for yourself, you could consolidate the Parent Plus loans that you took out for your child, along with the student loans that you took out for yourself. You could take those two groups of loans, consolidate them into a new direct consolidation loan. And when it's time to review the qualifying payments that you have, what they'll do is they'll look at the direct consolidation loan, but give it credit for the loan in the portfolio, the oldest loan in the portfolio that is not a Parent Plus loan. I'm going to backtrack on that because I know it sounds very confusing. You have a batch of Parent Plus loans. You have a batch of student loans for yourself. Once those loans are all combined into a consolidation loan, the history of that Parent Plus loan would be set aside. And what the Department of Education or their designated servicer would look at is the payment, the repayment status history of your student loans in that portfolio. So the Parent Plus loans would be ignored. However, they would be given credit for the same number of months as your student loans that you took out for yourself. So it is true that the parent loans, Parent Plus loans are not eligible for the credit directly. However, by consolidating them with your own student loans into a direct consolidation loan, that Parent Plus loan or those Parent Plus loans could end up being forgiven based on the qualifying employment and the repayment status history of your own student loans. So again, not an easy path for parents, not a path at all with the waiver for people who only have Parent Plus loans. But if you happen to be a parent who has plus loans for your child as well as student loans for yourself, then there is a possibility that you could gain additional credit for past payments through the waiver and hopefully get rid of all of those loans when forgiveness comes. All right, I'm going to take a quick pause and look very quickly at social media just to see if we've got anything going there. Any questions? No, I see none. All right. So next question. I heard income-driven repayment plans have forgiveness, even if you don't work in public service. How does it work? So income-driven repayment plans do offer cancellation after a borrower has made payments for a minimum of 20 or 25 years. This type of cancellation is available with the income-driven repayment plans. So the income-driven repayment plans that are out there are, there's income-based repayment, there's pay-as-you-earn, there's revised pay-as-you-earn, there's also income contingent repayment plan. But I want to make sure that I highlight the difference between forgiveness and cancellation. The words are sometimes used interchangeably, but with federal student loans, when we hear about forgiveness, usually that's attached to public service loan forgiveness or teacher loan forgiveness, not someone who works outside of public service. The cancellation is usually what happens after someone has paid for the 20 or 25 years through those income-driven plans. They're able to have that debt canceled. Now, up until fairly recently, the cancellation that was provided from those income-driven plans was treated as taxable income. So if someone had made payments for 20 years, but still had $100,000 worth of student loan debt, and they were able to have that debt canceled, then that $100,000 that they had canceled would be treated as taxable income. So they could potentially face a large tax burden. And sorry, but the time frame escapes me right now, but I will go back and add a comment after this broadcast with the specifics. The Biden administration did enact a provision for this cancellation to be tax-free, but I think that it is only good through either the end of 2025 or maybe early 2026. Don't quote me on that one, but like I said, I will leave a comment after the broadcast is over with some text that links to that provision. So again, forgiveness is usually with public service or teachers. Cancellation is usually applied when talking about the relief that could be received after a person has made 20 or 25 years of payments under one of those income-driven plans. So there could be some taxes there, but if it's public service loan forgiveness, then that is not taxable at the federal level. All right, and this question, this is one that I get frequently, and the answer I always have to give is, it depends. The question is, how can I get my loans forgiven? It depends on so many factors. The biggest one really is the type of loans that you have. There are two varieties of student loans. There are federal student loans, there are private student loans. When it comes to private student loans, there are no forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness for private student loan borrowers. There are no programs like that around to my knowledge. With federal student loans, it depends on what type of loans you have, and also what, for the purposes of public service loan forgiveness, what type of employment you have. So that's why we're going to go deeper tonight on public service loan forgiveness and also details of that limited PSLF waiver. One more question first though, is loan forgiveness taxable? Again, it depends on the type of loan forgiveness the borrower receives. If you receive loan forgiveness through public service loan forgiveness, then no, it is not taxable at the federal level. And I think that there may only be a few states left that might tax it as well. The other form of cancellation, like I said, up until recently, that type of cancellation was treated as taxable income. And there is a temporary provision in place that will remove the tax burden. But I will also say that with that, the cancellation after paying on those income-driven repayment plans, so far, not too many people have been able to achieve that cancellation. So I'm hoping that things will change and that provision that allows for cancellation will be allowed to benefit many more people than it has thus far. But at least for the next few years, there's a temporary reprieve on taxes, and any debt canceled after paying on those income-driven plans for 20 or 25 years should not result in a federal tax burden. So now let's get into public service loan forgiveness. Public service loan forgiveness, what is it? I'm going to give you the textbook definition first. The PSLF program forgives the remaining balance on your direct loans after you have made qualifying payments under a qualifying repayment plan while working full-time for a qualifying employer. Lots of qualifying that you have to do. So we're going to spend the next few slides talking about how those qualifications work together for a person to achieve public service loan forgiveness. So you got 120 qualifying payments have to be made on direct loans while in qualifying repayment plans, while working for a qualifying employer, and also while working for that qualifying employer at the time that you apply for and receive PSLF. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, per the IRS, the forgiven amount is not treated as taxable income through public service loan forgiveness. So let's talk about the first set of qualifications. That's qualifying payments. You have to make a minimum of 120 monthly payments on or after October 1st of 2007. Those payments must be made on time and in full. You can make multiple partial payments, but they will count as one payment. And all payments must be received within 15 days of the due date to be considered on time. Fortunately, the payments do not need to be consecutive. So if you worked, let's say in public service for 9 years, and then you decided that you were going to switch to a for-profit job, did it for a couple of years, turns out it wasn't for you, and you decided to go back into the nonprofit space, then the clock for your public service loan forgiveness count would begin where you left off at the 9-year mark. So you would not lose credit for those 9 years of prior payments just because you decided to do something different for a bit or you took a break. Also, extra payments do not qualify. So you wouldn't be able to trim this process down to 1 year by making huge payments over the course of 12 months. So we're looking at a 120-month minimum commitment. One bonus here is that the CARES Act forbearance, which has helped many of us not have to make payments and also not have interest accruing on our federal student loans since March of 2020. The months of zero payments during the CARES Act forbearance should count toward the 120 necessary for public service loan forgiveness, provided that you were working in a qualifying public service for a qualifying public service employer. So the work is something that you cannot get around. Second, qualifying loans. Direct loans are eligible for public service loan forgiveness, and they come in many varieties. There's the direct subsidized loan, direct unsubsidized loan, the direct plus loan for graduate students, the direct parent plus loan, and the direct consolidation loan. And also for a list of all loans that can be consolidated, you can visit studentaid.gov. The application is online. You can take a look at your loan portfolio and find out which loans can be consolidated if that's something that you're interested in doing. There is an asterisk there next to the direct parent plus loan, exactly because of what I mentioned earlier during the first set of questions. The parent plus loans can be eligible for public service loan forgiveness, but the most favorable plans for public service loan forgiveness are income-driven plans. And the only way to get access to one income-driven plan is through consolidation. So those parent plus loans would become a direct consolidation loan. All right, so requirement number 3. Qualifying repayment plans. There's a laundry list here. The qualifying repayment plans include the 10-year standard plan, the income-based repayment plan, income contingent repayment, pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn, but also other plans for which the monthly payment is greater than the 10-year standard plan payment. Basically, the safest way to be certain that your plan qualifies is to use one of the income-driven plans. But there can be situations where a borrower's income rises to the point where the payment under an income-based plan is higher than the payment that's required by the 10-year standard plan. If that's the case, those months of payments could still count. So you do get credit for payments that are made on the income-driven plans as well as the 10-year standard plan, as long as you're working in public service at the same time. And once again, the income-driven plans are the ones that are most likely to yield a balance for forgiveness. All right, number 4, qualifying employment. This is very important. There is no way to get around this requirement. It's public service loan forgiveness because you're required to work for a public service employer. But let's be clear, your job title isn't relevant to this. Where you work matters more than what you do. They're looking for the type of organization that you work for. So government, from federal down to state, local, and tribal, 501c3 tax-exempt organizations, and other tax-exempt organizations that provide qualifying services. So no one's asking what your title is. One question that I've fielded recently was, I'm an accountant, what about me? And if you're an accountant, that's fine, as long as you work for a public service employer. Your job title does not matter. So it's the type of organization you work for that determines whether your employment is qualifying. Next is you have to work full-time. Full-time is the greater of your employer's definition of full-time or 30 hours per week. You could also have multiple part-time jobs that qualify, and those part-time jobs added together could equate to a full-time position. A special note for people who are employed in religious work. If you're at a nonprofit organization, prior to July 1st of 2021, hours spent in religious instruction, worship services, or proselytizing did not count toward public service loan forgiveness. So if you were a member of the clergy and the bulk of your time was spent in any of these activities, then technically that time was not supposed to count toward the 30 hours per week or you meeting that full-time definition. However, this restriction was eliminated as of July 1st, 2021. So that makes things a lot easier for members of the clergy who are looking to count their time. All right, so our 5th requirement, this is qualifying employment and timing. Borrowers must work in public service for the 120 months during which payments were made, but also must remain in public service at the time that the PSLF application is submitted and also when loan forgiveness is received. So it takes a lot for all 5 of those qualifications to work over the course of 120 months. And as a result, prior to October of last year, most people who apply for public service loan forgiveness have been rejected. About 98% of the borrowers who submitted applications were rejected. Another program came about that was supposed to expand access to public service loan forgiveness by counting payments that were made under an ineligible repayment plan. Unfortunately, it also had a similar rejection rate. So on October 6th of last year, the Department of Education announced the limited PSLF waiver. And the slide that you see here is comparing the original PSLF to the temporary expanded PSLF and now the limited PSLF waiver. So let's look at these qualifications and you can see where the big differences are. So the first column is original PSLF. Those 5 qualifications that we just went through, all of those have to be working together in order for you to be granted public service loan forgiveness. So that means 120 monthly payments only on direct loans, only in qualifying repayment plans while working for a qualifying employer and remaining in that qualifying employment at the time that you apply for PSLF and receive it. Temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness eliminated one of those requirements, and that was that you had to be enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan, but the other 4 qualifications still held. As for the limited PSLF waiver, we are down to 2 requirements. The first is that instead of 120 monthly payments, we're looking at 120 periods of repayment. So this means months that your loan was in a repayment status. It doesn't mean that you had to make payments. It just means that your loans had to be in a repayment status. The second requirement is that those 120 periods of repayment had to occur while you were working for a qualifying employer. So no longer is it just about direct loans. No longer do you have to be enrolled in the exactly right repayment plan. And also, if you've left public service, if you've retired, it's okay. The waiver makes it so that as long as you meet those 2 requirements, having 120 periods of repayment while working for a qualifying employer, then you can be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Now, big thing about the waiver is that it is temporary. It expires on October 31st of 2022. So it's a time-sensitive opportunity, and I hope that everyone who is eligible for it will be able to take advantage of it to the fullest. So a few more notes on the waiver. Under the new rules, any prior payment made will count as a qualifying payment regardless of loan type, repayment plan, or whether the payment was made in full or on time. They're actually now looking at your loan status history, not just the payments that you made, but the status of your loan. So as long as your loan is in repayment status, then those months are to count as qualifying payments. This change will apply to student loan borrowers with direct loans, those who have already consolidated into the direct loan program, and those who consolidate into the direct loan program by October 31st, 2022. So remember, this is a time-sensitive opportunity. And also, once again, Parent Plus loans are not eligible under the limited PSLF waiver. They're not eligible alone. But if you are a parent who has Parent Plus loans for your child and student loans for yourself, then you could consolidate them to gain access to PSLF through this limited waiver opportunity. All right, so the most common question after all of that is, what should I do next? Well, the steps you take will depend on what types of loans you have, but they're generally 3 steps. And the big thing to remember here is whatever you're going to do, you need to do it before October 31st of 2022 to take advantage of this opportunity. So the first step is to know your loans. You can log in online to studentaid.gov, where you will be able to see your loan history, any loans you've consolidated in the past, the loans that you currently have a balance on. Everything is there online at studentaid.gov. The second thing is, after you look at those loan types, you will know whether or not you need to consolidate in order to take advantage of the waiver. The good thing is the application to consolidate is available online. It's free, and it's in the same place where you go to know your loans, and that's studentaid.gov. So if you decide to consolidate, then you'll need to do that by October 31st of 2022. About the decision to consolidate, this really depends on what types of loans you have. If all of the loans in your portfolio are direct loans, then you don't have to consolidate. But if you have FFEL loans, Perkins loans, then you will need to consolidate to take advantage of this opportunity. Under the original rules of PSLF, FFEL loans, Perkins loans are not eligible for public service loan forgiveness. But through this limited waiver, you can consolidate those types of loans into a direct consolidation loan. But you may also be able to receive credit for your past payments that were made on those FFEL or Perkins loans, as long as you were working in public service at the time that your loans were in that repayment status. So if you have FFEL or Perkins loans, you will have to consolidate in order to take advantage of this limited waiver opportunity. The third thing that you'll need to do, and this goes for everyone who's interested in public service loan forgiveness, and that's to certify your employment. You have to verify that you've worked for qualifying employers. There are a couple of things you can do. The first is you can use the PSLF help tool that's available at studentaid.gov. This will allow you to populate much of the form online before submitting it to your employer for their verification. If you use that tool, you'll be able to see if your employer is already in the database as an approved employer. If your employer is not in that database and you know that it's a tax-exempt organization that engages in the work of public service, then I encourage you, please proceed with your application. The other way to submit the application is on paper. You can download the PSLF application paper form also from studentaid.gov. And again, if you want credit through this limited waiver opportunity, you need to submit the form by October 31st of 2022. So know your loans. When you look at the type of loans that you have, you'll be able to determine whether you should consolidate and also certify your employment. Another thing here about employment, if you've worked for multiple public service employers since October of 2007, you want to complete a form for each of those employers so that you can get as much credit as possible toward that qualifying employment. Because for public service loan forgiveness, you still need to have 120 months. And the 120 months of qualifying employment is non-negotiable. So pull out that resume, look at all of your past employers since October of 2007, and you want to submit those forms so that the Department of Education or their designated servicer can go ahead and start to count the months of employment you have. Once they count the months of employment you have, they're going to compare those months to your loan status history. And what they're looking for is overlap. So if you have 120 months in repayment while you were working in that qualifying employment, that's what it takes for public service loan forgiveness, tax-free forgiveness of that federal student loan debt, okay? All right, so here's some additional informational resources for borrowers. The best source for information about federal student loans is studentaid.gov. You can go there, log in to view your loans, access the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Help tool, and also complete the application to consolidate if you decide to consolidate for this opportunity. Another great resource for information is the Institute for Student Loan Advisors. They go by TSLF. Their website is freestudentloanadvice.org. There's also a Reddit PSLF mega thread that has tons of information from many borrowers who are sharing their real-time experiences as they apply for the waiver and wait to hear back about whether their applications have been approved. Also, the Student Borrower Protection Center at protectborrowers.org. They have a video library that you can access that will show you exactly how to identify your loan types, certify your employment, and go about consolidating your loans. So check them out if you want to see what it looks like to log into that studentaid.gov portal before you go in yourself. And I think you will be in very good hands. All right, so back to some of the questions from our community. Another one of the most common ones is, how do I know if I qualify? What it comes down to is your employment history and your repayment status history. Those are the two things that matter during this waiver. You have to have 120 months of qualifying employment, and those months need to overlap the months where your federal student loans were in a repayment status. The Department of Education or their designated servicer will not know to begin counting your months toward the 120 until you submit the form to certify your employment. So complete the PSLF application to certify your employment. The Department of Education will evaluate your repayment history. And if it turns out that you have that 120 months of both the qualifying employment and the loans in a repayment status, then you could be sitting on that instant forgiveness. Now, instant's a bad choice of words because it'll take a few months for them to process it. But for some people, they already have the 120 months. They just need to apply through this waiver or consolidate their loans by October 31st of this year in order to get access to that forgiveness. So please, if you have to, if you want to take advantage of the waiver, make sure that you take action by October 31st of this year. All right, which leads to the next question. What should I do next and when? It depends on the type of loans you have. For every borrower, you should know your loans. Another thing every borrower should do is certify your employment, because if you don't certify your employment, the Department of Education or their servicer will not begin to count the number of months that you have toward the 120 that you need for that qualifying employment and for the loans to be in a repayment status. If you have non-direct loans in your portfolio, then you have that additional decision that you have to make, and that's whether to consolidate your loans. So if you have FFEL loans or Perkins loans, you would need to consolidate those loans in order for them to be considered for public service loan forgiveness through the waiver. If you only have direct loans, then technically you do not need to consolidate because your loans are already direct. However, for some people who have only direct loans, it may be to your advantage to consolidate. If you have direct loans, let's say from 2 degrees, you had loans from an undergraduate degree and you had loans from a graduate degree that you pursued maybe 5 years later. If you consolidate through the waiver, then once your loans are consolidated, the Department of Education is going to look at your repayment history and they can give you credit for the payments that were made on the older loans in the portfolio. So that could really work to the advantage of people who have more than one set of loans that entered repayment at different times. So if you have direct loans, you don't need to consolidate, but in some cases, it could work to your advantage to consolidate, especially if you have groups of loans that went into repayment at different times. So again, what you should do next depends on the type of loans you have. If you have FFEL loans and Perkins loans, consolidation is something that you need to do. If you have all direct loans already, then consolidation would be optional for you. But either way, whatever you do, if you want to take advantage of the waiver, you have to do it by October 31st of 2022. All right, I'm going to take a pause to see if we have any questions. All right, I've got nothing in the chat, nothing in Q&A just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to something that is state specific, the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit. First, I want to give you a definition straight from the Maryland Higher Education Commission, which I'll refer to from here on out as MHEC. The Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit provides an income tax credit for Maryland resident taxpayers who are making eligible undergraduate and or graduate education loan payments on loans from an accredited college or university. So this could include loans that were obtained while a person was pursuing an undergraduate or a graduate degree, such as an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, a master's degree, professional, graduate, doctoral, or postdoctoral degree. So that is the textbook definition of the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit. But I know what people want to know is, how do I qualify for this? So this particular tax credit is open to Maryland taxpayers who have meet the following two qualifications. First, you have to have borrowed at least $20,000 in undergraduate and or graduate student loan debt. And at the time that you apply for the tax credit, you need to have at least $5,000 remaining in outstanding student loan debt. So you have to have borrowed at least $20,000 and you must have at least $5,000 outstanding at the time that you apply for the credit. Priority is given to people who meet the following criteria. First, those who have not received this particular tax credit in a prior year. Second, those who were eligible for in-state tuition. Third, those who graduated from an institution of higher education located in Maryland. And fourth, borrowers who have higher debt burden to income ratios. I can tell you from personal experience with this tax credit, I have received it. I did apply 2 years in a row. The second year, it was not, I was not granted the request because I had received it in a prior tax year, but I applied again in the third year and I received it. So it's not that you cannot receive this credit. It's not that you can only receive this credit once. It's just that usually you don't receive it in back-to-back years because there's a priority placed on awarding the credit to borrowers who have not received the credit thus far. So if you received it last year, if you want to apply again, maybe you should, but chances are that there'll be enough other people who apply for it for the first time that they'll receive it and you may not receive it because you already received it in the past. So just hold out another year and perhaps it will come back. All right, so how to apply. The application for this particular tax credit is available at onestop.md.gov. The application is not available yet, but once it becomes available, you can complete it online at onestop.md.gov. There is an additional requirement, and that's that within 2 years from the close of the taxable year for which the credit applies, it says pay the amount awarded toward their college loan debt and provide proof of payment to MHEC. So within 2 years after the close of the year in which you receive the credit, you need to make payments on your student loans. And then you need to provide proof to MHEC that you made payments on your student loans. As for the materials to complete the application, you'll need to have your Maryland income tax return readily available. You'll also need to obtain transcripts from the institutions you attended. I believe unofficial transcripts are acceptable. And then you'll need to provide lender documentation so that you can provide proof of your existing student loan debt. And MHEC's website has plenty of information on the materials, the process for applying. Pay special attention to that lender documentation though, because the lender documentation will tell you what type of documentation is acceptable. There are certain things that they need to see on the documentation, such as the servicer's name, I think the type of loan you have, the balance. There's a list of requirements that the documentation must satisfy in order for your application to be approved. So please do visit MHEC online so that you can take a look at the requirements and make sure that when you do submit your application, it is complete, and I hope that it will be accepted. Right, and the application becomes available, I believe it's July 1st, and it remains available until September the 15th. And this is a question that came up, and I think I already answered that, but I'll answer it again. It says, can I get the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit more than once? And the answer to this point has been yes, but just be reminded that MHEC places a priority on applicants who have not received the tax credit in a prior year. So you could apply back to back, but you may not receive it in that second year because a priority is placed on awarding the tax credit to borrowers who have not received it already. All right, wow. Time for additional questions, and we've got about 15 minutes left. Covered quite a bit of ground, so if you have any questions, please do feel free to jump in now and let me know. All right, I see the chat is currently empty. Q&A, I've got nothing there. All right, I'm gonna check on Facebook. No questions here. I'm going to take that to mean I answered every single question. Not necessarily the case. All right. Once again, my name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy, and you are tuned into Office Hours, which is presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. You can visit us on our Facebook page at the MCCFW. Also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the MCCFW. And I'm Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy, the founder and director of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. You can also visit us online and join our mailing list at mccfw.org. That's mccfw.org. And since we don't have any questions just yet, I'm going to pause the sharing of the slides and see if I can share something different with you. Just bear with me for just a moment because I get a lot of questions about the actual PSLF application. And if I can show you what the application looks like, I can show you some of the most common places where people end up making mistakes. So let's share the screen. And we are going to look at the application for public service loan forgiveness. So A quick thing to note about the application for public service loan forgiveness. This form has actually been streamlined. There used to be separate applications for public service loan forgiveness, another process for the temporary expanded PSLF, and another form to certify your employment. The form has since been condensed. Great idea. So now there's one form that you can submit to certify your employment and actually apply for both public service loan forgiveness and the temporary expanded version of public service loan forgiveness. So let's go through this application. Section 1 is borrower information. So your personally identifying information will go here. Section 2, this is where you will need to check a box that indicates your purpose for filling out the application. So for most people, I venture to say they want to find out how many qualifying payments they have made, or if their employer is a qualified employer. So this is your employment certification. The second purpose there is for people who believe they qualify for forgiveness right now. So people who think that they already have the 120 months of qualifying employment and the 120 months of payments or loans being in a repaid status, they would check that box. The third box says, if I indicated that I believe I qualify for forgiveness now, I want a forbearance while my application is being processed. But I understand that periods of forbearance do not count towards forgiveness. So if you do think you have the 120 payments as of the time that you're submitting this application, you could opt to pause your payments through a forbearance. But if it turns out that you're wrong and you don't have the 120 required payments, putting your loans into a forbearance will mean that no payments are being made. So if they had to go back and take a look at those months, they wouldn't technically count because your loans weren't in a repayment status. The exception again to that forbearance rule would be the CARES Act forbearance. If you're working in public service and your loans are in a forbearance due to the CARES Act forbearance, then those months should count toward the 120 that you need for public service loan forgiveness. So let's go down to the bottom of this page. Here, you're just certifying that the information you're providing is true, no lies are being told. And also, if you aren't able to certify your employment, let's say you work for an organization that's now closed, or there was no representative there who is willing to certify your form, then you can check that box and you'll go to the Department of Education will let you know what you'll need to do in order to get that employment certified by other means. So Section 3 is where you will fill in your employer's name, their federal employer ID number, which you should be able to obtain from your W-2, their address, and here is the section where many people make mistakes. Number 5, 6, and 7. You need to include your employment start date. So that's the date you began working with the employer, and your employer end date. If you are still with the same employer, make sure that you check the still employed box. This is something that can get your application rejected on a technicality. So if you're still working for the employer, please make sure that you check that still employed box. Box number 7 is your employment status, full-time or part-time. And then number 8 is the average number of hours that you work per week. 9 through 13 will be verifying the type of organization that you work for. And of course, it needs to be a government organization, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, or another type of tax-exempt organization that performs the types of public services that are listed here in question 13. Right. Once the employer information is taken care of, the person who's certifying your employment will need to sign and provide their contact information as well as the date. If you share this form with a person and they are apprehensive about signing it, please do let them know that, this is really just verifying your employment. It's not making them responsible for anything or liable for any of the debt, nothing at all. This just serves as a person who's verifying that you were employed by the organization for a certain time, working in a certain status. So if someone's afraid, please, direct them to studentaid.gov and maybe show them a bit more about the program so that they understand that this is truly a certification of your employment. This does not put them on the hook for anything. That's what I've heard before from people who don't want to sign the form. They're afraid to be on the hook with the debt. That's not going to happen. All right, so section 5 and section 6, lots and lots of definitions. And section 7, where to send the completed form. For now, that is the Department of Education through Fed Loan Servicing. That is the one servicer who's been designated to manage the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. You can mail it to them, you can fax it, or upload the form online if Fed Loan Servicing is already your servicer. If Fed Loan Servicing is not your servicer, when you indicate that you're interested in public service loan forgiveness and you send this form in, that triggers your loans being transferred to Fed Loan if you are seriously pursuing public service loan forgiveness. There's been one servicer to handle the program, and that is Fed Loan Servicing. That arrangement is scheduled to come to an end, but for now, it's Fed Loan Servicing. So make sure that you send your paperwork in as described in this form. So this form is available at studentaid.gov. If you go to studentaid.gov/PSLF, you will access plenty of information about the program. You can complete most of this form online using the PSLF help tool, and then of course get a signature from each employer where you worked that was a qualifying employer after October 1st of 2007. All right. So that is the PSLF application. And I'm going to stop sharing once again and check to see if I've got any questions. All right. I'm looking at the comments. I see my buddy Fawn. Great info. Thanks until next time. Fawn, you might have tuned out by now, but thank you for joining me, Fawn. I appreciate you. All right, let's see if we got any more questions. All right, Q&A is empty. Nothing in the chat. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left. Always a good time to remind you that my name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy. I'm the founder and director of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. You can visit us online at mccfw.org to join our mailing list and check out our programs and events. And you can also follow us on social media. We are at the MCCFW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for joining us tonight. All right. Okay. This is the time where I could really use some background music. But I'm just hoping that I've answered your questions. I see my Aunt Linda says great information. Thank you for joining me, Auntie. All right. This is also a good time to share that by our next edition of Office Hours, which will be held on February 23rd, that's 2 weeks from tonight, again, it's 7 p.m., 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be able to share our MD TAPS resource page. MD TAPS stands for Maryland Telepublic Servant, and this is a statewide campaign that we are embarking on to spread awareness about public service loan forgiveness and the limited PSLF waiver among our public servants in the state of Maryland. So we put together a webpage full of resources. We're asking people to take the pledge to tell at least one public servant about this program, and we will have resources for you to share with the public servants in your life so that they can take advantage of this limited time opportunity that is going to expire on October 31st of this year. So we've got a little more than 8 months left. I also had the pleasure of being interviewed for USA Today about 3 weeks ago. And in the article, the Department of Education was cited as giving some updated numbers on the waiver. So prior to the waiver, about 16,000 borrowers had been approved for public service loan forgiveness. And this is in almost 4 years, about 16,000 people have been approved altogether. Since the waiver was enacted on October 6th of 2021, between October of 2021 and January of 2022, that number has increased from 16,000 to 70,000, not 17,000, 70,000 people. So this waiver is making such a difference for many people. And in Maryland, we have many people who work for the federal government, state government, lots of nonprofits and tax exempt organizations. And here at the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, we want as many people as possible to be able to take advantage of this life-changing opportunity. For some people, it means that they already have the 120 months of qualifying repayment status history and qualifying employment. So their balances will be wiped away as soon as their applications have been submitted properly and evaluated. For other people who had FFEL loans or Perkins loans and previously had none of those months, none of those payments counted toward public service loan forgiveness, this waiver could mean that those past payments actually give them credit. So if you're not one of the ones that already has the 120 months, don't use that as a reason to not apply for the waiver. If you don't have the 120, that's fine, but the waiver can help you get credit for the past payments that you have made, and you could be a lot closer to the 120 payments than you originally thought. But the key is to take action by October 31st of 2022. Quick rehashing of the 3 steps. The first one is to know your loans. Log into studentaid.gov, take a look at the types of loans that you have. The second one is to make the decision whether to consolidate. If you have FFEL loans or Perkins loans, then you will need to consolidate to take advantage of the waiver. If you have direct loans, you don't have to, but you may want to. But either way, if you're going to consolidate, do it by October 31st of 2022. And the third step is to certify your employment. You must certify your employment, because if you don't, the Department of Education or their designated servicer will not be able to count the number of months you have in qualifying employment. And the qualifying employment is one thing, that's the one requirement you cannot get around, okay? So make sure that you certify your employment. I know that was really a quick run through of the 3 steps, but as always, you can look at the replays of office hours. We've had several out there, and I want to apologize again. I had some technical difficulties at the beginning of this. My computer started an update right before I got on to Zoom, and we had some issues starting this one, but there are others that are out there and share some of the same information about PSLF and the limited waiver. So it is exactly 8 o'clock. To all of you who joined the live broadcast and logged in through Zoom, I just want to thank you for spending this time with me in the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness as we spread awareness about the limited PSLF waiver and also work to help students and their families build financial life skills, empowering them to thrive. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver-Kennedy. I appreciate you, and I hope that you will share this information with the borrowers and public servicers, public servants in your life. Until next time, take care, be safe, and again, thank you for joining Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. See you next time.